I'm so excited to welcome you to the third season of It's Your Story to Tell. As we launch into this new season, we also celebrate the 2 years and 2 seasons since the podcast launched at the end of April 2023. I'm so grateful for all the storytellers who came on and vulnerably shared in the hopes of inspiring each of you as listeners in what's possible when we do the hard work of healing. And if you've been with us for a while, you already know this is a space where healing meets honesty and where stories that were once buried in silence finally find their voice. And that started back with the first episode where I shared my story. It was the first time that I spoke so publicly about the things that I had went through. And then in the second episode, I was just so honored to have my son who joined me and allowed us to share a little bit more about our story. And from that time forward, we have been so blessed by the many guests and their different stories. I know that there's probably one that can bring hope in your own life. This season, we're going to be sharing more amazing stories of transformation. And you're going to hear from women who are opening up about the places where pain and choice collided, where unhealed wounds influenced decisions that brought more hurt, more chaos, and more distance from the life they were meant to live. If you've listened to my story, you know that was part of my story before I began this transformation journey that I've been on for over the last 9 years. There's one hard truth that has to be acknowledged in order for you to start walking in freedom, and it's that we often play a role in our own unraveling. These women are going to talk about just how they made choices that impacted and ultimately caused them more trauma, harm, and self-sabotage. But what's really beautiful is that you're going to hear over and over again that even in these really dark moments, that redemption was never far away. All they had to do was recognize what was happening and make a different choice. Each of these women, they walked through the valley. They faced the consequences of staying in cycles that weren't serving them. But instead of staying stuck, they chose something different. They began the brave work of rewriting their stories, not as victims of their past, but as women empowered to create a new future. And here's the most powerful part. They aren't keeping their transformation to themselves. Now they're showing up as mentors, as guides, as living proof that healing is possible. That no matter how far you've wandered or how many times you've fallen, there's always a way back to the light. So whether you're in the thick of it right now or standing on the other side wondering how to help someone else, you're in the right place. This season is a reminder that your story, no matter how messy or painful, still matters. And it's not too late to turn the page because after all, it's your story to tell. And it's time for you to tell it with courage. I'm so thankful that you're here with us, and I'm excited for what you're going to hear in season 3. And I hope that it inspires you to be brave in your story, to share your story, and to use it to make a difference. What if everything you thought defined you, your success, your relationships, even your ability to do everything right, wasn't actually who you are? What if the pressure to perform and the fear of messing up has been holding you back from freedom and peace that you were made for? Today, we're going to dive deep into the journey of identity, perfectionism, and trust. What it really looks like to surrender and step into the person you were created to be. Welcome back to It's Your Story to Tell. I'm Megan Babcock, and I'm so excited about today's conversation with Dustina Hall. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So Dustina, she has a powerful story of resilience, healing, and transformation. She's passionate about helping women find true freedom. And she also joined me on the It's Your Story to Tell board recently when we launched. Dustina and I go back quite a ways to probably around 2007, early 2008, somewhere around there. And Dustina has just popped up in my life throughout it in these little moments of hard and where she's just been such an encouragement to me on my own journey. And I just am excited to have this conversation as someone who's also struggled with perfectionism and identity. So I know we're going to have a lot to talk about. But thank you for being part of It's Your Story to Tell and being here today and being willing to share your story. So tell us a little bit about kind of how perfectionism showed up in your life. Like, do you know what was causing it? And walk us through your journey of eventually where you come to learn to trust God.
Yeah.
That changed everything.
That's a loaded question.
We're just going to put it all out
Yeah,
there.
exactly. And I thank you so much for inviting me and just the journey that we have had together. I just appreciate you, Megan. And it's wonderful how you are showcasing women's stories because we all have one. And a lot of times that story is got shame and pain and disappointment and highs and lows and relationships, right? And so I think as a child, it was both my parents are very driven, very entrepreneurs, independent, and that was a great role model, really set my work ethic, my can do attitude, but it also put a lot of pressure in the aspect of I just only knew how to do. I didn't really know how to be, and I felt worthy when I was doing well, and I felt unworthy when I wasn't doing well or when I made mistakes or um, poor choices by choice. There was a lot of trauma, I mean, whatever, in my childhood, and I saw a lot of things that were just hard. And by the grace of God, I am so thankful. I did get introduced to Jesus when I was 5. So I just knew he was real. I don't know how, I just knew. So I always had a relationship with the Lord. My family then started going to church, but it was kind of a religious aspect of church. It was very condemning, even though we're not supposed to have therefore no condemnation, right? It's like the opposite. So
before you go on there, I just want to acknowledge that point because, that is one of the things that is so interesting about church and certain churches. And I had to go through this journey of like there's this religious spirit and the Pharisees who are judging and saying this is the way you're supposed to do it, but yet not really following. Like we were called to love God, love our neighbor, and that he's the judge. And, when we have that critical spirit, it's not the Holy Spirit. Like he told us what his fruits were.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's something I'm very passionate about and going to be doing a course on really to help people to be able to sit in these really hard stories because we all have a story. This world is broken and there's so much trauma and things, even if it's just not in your home, and yet we don't know how to sit in these really hard places. And sometimes we do more harm than good. And so
Yeah.
thanks for
Trying to get out
acknowledging
of them.
that.
Yeah, for sure. I can attest that I have caused my own self-destruction way more because I didn't want to sit or didn't want to address or didn't want to acknowledge or just the simple blind spots that we have, right? But yeah, the relationship I had with God, I just always had one, but I did see a lot of hypocrisy and I felt like, doesn't anyone ever else think there's something wrong with this? And so I had this really probably sense of justice and righteous, but I also really enjoyed having a lot of fun and doing my own thing. And I kind of remember in middle school, I would get in trouble a lot, specifically for my facial expression. So
My
I'm
kids
still
talk
working
to
on
me
that.
about
Still
that.
working on
Yes.
that.
My gosh. They're always like, your face said this. I'm like, well, I'm sorry. I was trying to be kind. And, I have this like eyebrow raise, I guess, that I do. And yeah, I
So,
feel you on that one.
come by it natural. But the thing that I remember is that I just decided one day that if I was just going to get in trouble, then I was at least going to have the fun that I was getting in trouble for and not actually doing. You know
Mm.
what I mean? Like I wasn't rebellious. I was challenging. And I would say that that is a God gift I have, that I am a challenger to just situations. And, and I like growth. I value growth and healing. And I think that I just had that from a very young age. I wanted what I wanted, but I wanted healthy. I wanted safe. I developed, like, just real quick, a little bit, from 11 years old to 37, I think I was bulimic. So, like, if anyone has ever struggled with uh, body image or identity or eating disorder, like, I totally get that. But I didn't know where it was coming from. I just was an athlete. I had a pretty critical dad. I don't think that was his intention, but he had a lot to say about a lot of people. And I was like, oh, I'm people. And so I put my own meaning to it.
Mhm.
Definitely identified myself. I found identity in the wrong things. I found worth and love in wrong things, in relationships, in body image, in sports. I had a business. I had my first business when I was like 10. I had business cards, printed them off, worked. I just loved being a
Yeah.
doer. And then by such a beautiful gift, but I found myself pregnant at 22, unexpected. And she was the biggest blessing in my life. She's 31 and I'm so proud of her. That was like, oh my gosh, it's not just me now. I have a family and child and I got to take care of this. So then the even more pressure came on to be successful. And this whole time I just wanted to be a family that was healthy. Like I just wanted a really healthy family and I could not figure out how to make that happen. And got married, not to her dad, got married, got divorced, was married for 12 years, was single for 12 years. That is in that time period. I think I might have been getting divorced when we met. Megan, I think that was our time period. So in all of that, I had been introduced to personal development at probably like 21 and I was hungry for it. I thought it was wonderful. I liked getting better, the idea of getting better. And I thought if there was a plan, like a strategic outline map, then that would be great. Then I like sign me up. However, I didn't factor in my own mistakes or my own weaknesses. I just thought if that is the plan, then I should be able to do the plan. And when I failed, it just confirmed that I was a failure. So I tried harder, right? I tried harder to love myself. I tried harder to prove myself. And all of this is going on internally. It is not really externally. Like I had a thriving business. I was a manicurist for 23 years. Loved that. I loved doing nails, but I also just really loved the women. I loved hearing the stories and talking to them and loving on them. And so I think, I'm so grateful because God really has placed me in really cool situations where I have been surrounded by a lot of people, but also just naturally been able to love on people. And so, but I was also terrified if anyone found out what I was really like on the inside, then the whole shenanigans would be up, right? And who would ever want to do business with me? And then after being a manicurist, I found a great nutrition company in network marketing and I loved it. But talk about more pressure because then it's like, you really don't want anyone to know your flaws and your failures because you're trying to be like, hey, I got all my stuff together. So it has been a long journey of humility, of seeking help. I'm a firm believer in therapy. I'm also but therapy is not the answer. Jesus is. You're surrendering. It's all the tools, but at the end of the day, you have to find your worth and your value and your solid ground in who God says you are because nothing else will stick. Nothing else lasts. And so in my singlehood, I was really pursuing healing. And that's a beautiful thing. And I had a ton. And I didn't know until, I mean, oh my gosh, a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, that this thing, this buzzing that I had in me wasn't normal. I thought everyone's body buzzed, but I had a jacked up central nervous system from trauma and triggers, right? And so I just thought that was normal. And my husband actually pointed out that I don't think that's normal. And then in counseling, the counselor's like, "What are you feeling in your body?" But with that to say, you can only heal so far when you can absolutely control your environment. So as a single person, I was able to control my environment and control relationship, right? If I didn't like somebody, you weren't going to get close. I didn't need you to get close. Well, in relationship, there's twofold. One, they're in your business every day. You can't really hide your flaws because they're going to show in your home, right? And in your day to day. But there's also people in those other people's lives that have to be in yours, like exes. And that was very difficult for me because I didn't know how to handle the familiar triggers that were presenting that, but I wasn't a part of the problem. I was just there present, right? So that was difficult and challenging. And then in that time period, I would say the last 10 years have been a beautiful, painful process of transformation and healing. And I mean, I'm in it still, but I'm like much farther on the other side, and my body doesn't buzz, and it's beautiful. And I have identity, I know where my worth comes from. But all that to say, I felt like that God, like, and I don't even know if it's God, if it was God or just life, right? But God uses everything. In 20, like in 2018, I was burnt out on my career in nutrition. I was like, I just don't want to keep doing this, but I didn't know what else to do. And I didn't go to college. I didn't really have like a resume. And then, so that again it's a new presenting of you might be really talented and you've been very successful, but on paper, you're just nothing. And like you could go get a job as a checker. That's about all that you could do. And so I struggled a lot. But I kept pushing my nutrition business forward, knowing that God was asking me not to, but I was like, but this I have to do because it's paying the bills and it's, da da da. So then 2020 hits and the whole world shuts down and my business spiked, which I thought was great. And then it just crashed. And then I had to reinvent myself and I didn't even know where to start at all. Didn't know what I wanted to do. I kind of had lost myself in this identity of nutrition and fitness and whatnot. And so it felt like I was on public display of not knowing what I was doing. And it felt like I would be excited about one thing and then talk about it on social media only to realize like it really wasn't something God was pulling me to. And then that kind of built up, right? Like it felt like back when I was younger, where if I failed, then I was confirming that I was a failure. And, hindsight, looking back, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful because all these little things that I tried opened doors that are open today and I need today for what he has called me to do, which, we don't know God's ways, but it was scary. And I'm also newly married and I I want to, of course, contribute and be a contributor to my family. And I was when we met doing well. And so there was a lot of humbling of like, oh, I am not comfortable in the not controlled environment. So with that said, that there was a lot happening, there was hope, but it was being deferred. It felt like the things that I had prayed for and longed for were there, but they were just out of reach. The family I wanted, the stability I wanted, all these things. And they just weren't, I could see them, but I didn't know how to get them. And I just pressed into God. But then finally, at one point, I got frustrated and I was like, okay, well, if you're who you say you are, and then you figure it out because I can't do it. And last year, my word for the year was trust. I do a word every year, but he showed me this beautiful word picture that it's not the kind of trust like free falling that we might think of, like bungee jumping or something. It was literally trust, where I'm on a pink flamingo floaty in the ocean and I don't have a care in the world and I'm looking up, sky is blue, sun's out, and I'm supported and have in like ease and peace, and it's beautiful. And he kept showing me this word visual picture all year long. Interestingly enough, I actually got the opportunity to live it out in November, in Hawaii. The floaty was not a pink flamingo; it was an orange round too, but it was really close. And I went, oh, this is surrendering. Like, just I laid it all out and I was like, here's all my hopes, here's all my disappointments, here's my abilities, and I do it. And what I thought is from churchy, right, is God works all things together for those who love him. So I'm like, I have to love, I must need to love better or obey better or do something because things aren't working out. So it always come back to me, and like, you got to try harder, get it together. And the harder I tried, the less together I had, which was just a like painful experience. And what I realized is our relationship with God isn't really any different than it is with a person. And it's us coming in relationship, being authentic, being like, this is where I'm at today. These are my hopes and my dreams. I need to be able to lean on you. I don't know how to, I mean, I surrender, and by the evening I picked up 5 things I like surrendered in the morning. I'm like, oh, I forgot. I was like, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut today. Well, blew that by coffee. But the relationship with my husband is showing me how maybe I have been getting it a little bit wrong with my relationship with God because I haven't felt comfortable to let him, right? Because I'm like, well, I don't want to be disappointed if I don't do something. And then the only person to blame would be me. So I'm learning that he is a big enough God and he has called us to it, that he is okay if we say, like where I was, where it was like, well, if you're who you say you are, then you got to do it. Then you do it. And he's okay with that. He's okay with our honesty. In fact, he needs us to be honest. And the comical thing is that he already knows our hearts and our thoughts. He even knows our hearts and deepest thoughts far greater than we probably do, right? But I love that too, because he not only knows them, he knows why they're there. He knows where they stemmed from, the root that they came. So I was telling you that quote. What was the quote? Like, when God called you, he already factored in your stupidity. Well, I don't like the stupidity aspect, but I do like your mistakes or ignorance, your environment, right? He already factored just yourself. Like, he knows things about you that you don't even know. And so I all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, this is such a relief because I don't know why I do the things that I do sometimes. And also, are they wrong, or is that just how you created me to be? And I'm not supposed to be this person who I think is just so sweet and nice and they never offend people. And I'm like, not intentionally, but
It's so hard when you're kind of trying to sort through all of those different things. And I really love how you shared when we're honest, right? Because if you're not honest with God, with yourself, with your situation, like, I lived in a very fake world. Like you said, you kept everything pristine. Here's how my kids dressed. Here's what my Facebook posts look like. And yet that was not reality. And so you can't fix or you can't find solutions for things that you're not willing to admit yourself. And I remember in my transformation one day. And I was, well, there's two that came to mind when you were talking about that. The first one was when I was just done. I was broken. Like, I've done everything that I know to do. What do you want me to do? I'll do whatever you want. And he's like, oh, finally, Megan. Like, thank you. You're willing to stop trying because that's not what you were intended to do. Like, come to me. Let's just work on who you are in me. And it was just like I started this. He told me how to take my thoughts captive and how to measure my thoughts and how to replace my thoughts and all of these different things. And then there was another instance where I was driving in the car and I was mad at God. And in religion, being mad at God, you're like looking around like where's lightning gonna strike, which I don't know that ever happened.
Totally.
And I just said what was on my heart and what I was struggling with. And like he answered me. And it was life changing when I finally was honest and he allowed me to see that the way I was characterizing him was not correct. And in fact, he took it a step further and showed me some areas where I was having judgment on someone else. And he was like, well, let me just help you to see that in some ways you're doing the same thing. You're justifying it. You're like, it's the pretty version of, coercion and manipulation and like what codependency is versus abusive. But it's ultimately, it's the same. Like you are not allowing someone to have free will and you're not being authentic and honest. So you need to start working on you. And I was like, oh, wow. But it was like so loving, even though he was correcting me. It was just so beautiful. And so for those of you who are afraid of God, he can take it. He wants to hear your heart. And when you do have that conversation, it opens the door for him to give you a different perspective. And it's not an easy journey though, and it's long. I've been on the journey for a long time, and what God's showing me is, well, why do you think it's ever going to be done? You're here perfecting your faith. You're trying to be more like me. You're never going to get there until you're going to get to come to heaven and things will be different there. But here on this earth, it's all about changing, growing your heart, how you show up for others. And then we're in that battle constantly with our human nature and our spiritual nature. So if you're hoping that the journey ever ends, sorry to tell you, news, maybe this will help you, but it's not ever over. So don't worry, just get started.